Tony Elumelu is widely regarded as the man who turned UBA around into one of the most influential banks in Nigeria and indeed in the rest of Africa. He's also one of the most influential business leaders. He's leading the renaissance of African philanthropy through the recent creation of the Tony Elumelu Foundation. He spoke to Kisha Gitara about some of the challenges and solutions the continent faces in business.
Unemployment is a problem, not just for Nigeria, but across Africa, and in fact, the world over now. America has just released statistics that is not so impressive either. In Nigeria, I think a couple of things have to be done, but we need to understand that the private sector actually creates employment to a large extent, and not government. There's been so much dependence on government in our environment to create employment. I think government should begin to focus on creating the enabling environment that will make the private sector to create jobs. And that is very important. That is what government should focus on at this time. What incentives does government have to provide the private sector to enable private sector to create more jobs? And there are sectors in the Nigerian economy that we should begin to focus on. Agriculture is the biggest employer of labor in developing countries, especially this country. So government should see, working with the private sector, how we can make that sector to grow. As it grows, a lot will be employed. So I think, yes, a lot has to be done. World Bank is right, and we can do quite a lot working with the private sector.
The Tony Elumelu Foundation has created an internship program that will help with this unemployment situation. Can you tell us some more about that?
We basically believe at the Tony Elumelu Foundation that there's something that is missing, and that is leadership. That is ability to manage and harness these resources. So if we fix leadership, then we'll be able to create the kind of economic prosperity and social wealth that we need in Africa. AMIP for us is one of the ways of creating business leaders, managers of resources, leaders who will help harness these abundant resources that we have in Africa. And the scheme works in a way that we bring people who are exposed in Western economies with their best practices, business strategies, etc., to work in small and medium enterprises in Africa. And we also, so by doing that, they help African business leaders develop structure setting strategies, implement them, or help them implement existing strategies that they've not been able to implement. At the same time, we also expose African business graduates to work with their colleagues from other parts of the world, so that certain stereotypes, certain mindsets, certain practices are either corrected, imbibed, emulated, and hopefully they can, if challenged further, be able to implement or to apply this in what they do.
What else is the Tony Elumelu Foundation working on? This is a new program. What else do you have in the pipeline?
One of the programs we run in the foundation is impact investing. It's quite new in this part of the world. It's about pursuing double bottom line objectives. So we try to, we believe charity is good, donation is good, but to a large extent, people like to actually become fishermen rather than you feeding them.
You talk a lot about the African private sector doing its bit to help African economic development. At what rate do you think we can do this? And are we ready? Are we even developed enough to take on that kind of burden?
I am a private sector person, and I believe strongly in the power of private sector. But for private sector to do well, the public sector government must create the right environment for private sector to be competitive across the continent and across the globe. Are we ready in Africa to compete as private sector? Yes, we are. Can we do better? Yes, we can do better. What does it take? We need the right government encouragement, enablement to do well as a sector. For the African private sector, we have to continue to engage with government. We have made progress as a continent from where things were, say, 10 years ago. I think that there are issues that are important to government. We need to work with government to make, like this issue of unemployment. We have to educate our leadership. At times, our leaders do certain things without knowing the full implications of those actions. We can't just give up. We have to engage them, let them know the implications of the actions they take or actions they fail to take, and how those actions they take or fail to take affect their own objectives. So through that process, we will have alignment of objectives. Government wants to create employment. Private sector wants to do well. If private sector does well, a natural consequence of doing well is employment generation. And as you create more employment, government even gets richer, people are employed, social unrest reduces, people pay tax, government is richer by the fact that people pay tax. So I think, yes, African private sector is ready to take the challenge.